All right, listeners, welcome to episode 9 of the Mi Duole podcast. We're really doing this. We're really getting a lot of episodes here. This is fun to do. We're especially grateful for Geno Smith and Chris Peterson who join us on this podcast. They share some of their stories about managing the team and being part of this team for the last, 20 years. They really carried us for a long time and set the precedent when it came to our culture and what we believe in and how we ride. So we're grateful for them. They spend about an hour with us sharing some real classic stories in true fashion. So we're grateful to have them on. We'd also like a big shout out to Volet as they sponsor the team. All of our apparel and all the gear that we wear comes from Volet. We're thankful for them and thankful for the race series that they've helped plan with Zwift. Starting on January 19th, Tuesday night races will start back up. You can go to the Volet website to register, see the races. There's 5 weeks worth of Zwift races coming up, sponsored by Volet with lots of fun prizes and swag, and it's just a good time. So check it out. We're grateful for them. All right, so on with the podcast. Thanks. All right, welcome to the Mi Duole podcast. Stuart Anderson here. I've got just a couple announcements and updates before we introduce our guests and who is along with me. First is an update from Morton Peterson. He actually sent me a text that I'm going to read. He wanted me to read it on the podcast live. So he says, I just want to thank everyone for supporting me and my wife by reaching out, donating their time and even money. It's been very overwhelming and heartwarming. I'm currently waiting my transplant surgery, but luckily I've been allowed to live outside the hospital in the apartment my wife and I are renting temporarily here in Indiana. There's still a long way to go for me, but with the support from friends, family, and such that I've received from Mi Duole, I'm sure I'll get through it. Once again, thank you. So Morton Pedersen's waiting on a transplant from a wreck he had on his bike in October. So super grateful for everyone supporting him. And obviously he's got great spirits, but let's keep him in our thoughts and prayers. And even if we want to send him a text or a message, I'm sure he'd appreciate it. So all the best to Morton and keep it up, dude. So join with me today, Spencer Chipping and Geno Smith and Chris Peterson. We're so excited. We've been waiting for this episode for a long time. Say hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
We're grateful to have Geno and Chris on. I'm going to introduce Chris and give you just a little bit of background on him. Chris was actually the very first yellow jersey recipient on the team. And I say that because when I joined the team, Chris was who I looked to as the mentor, as the example of what Mi Duole was all about, especially because I was like, why does a guy do what Chris does and think it's fun? He's like, he would go on this ride. I watched him do a double loop of White Rim. And when I was like, how was it? He was like, oh, it was the worst, but I loved every minute of it. And I'm like, dude, what's wrong with this guy? His teammates. So when Chris was nominated, it says, Chris has been a faithful member of Mi Duole for years. He's the first to team rides, crazy enough to do the BFR. Hopefully we'll talk about that. He's a friend to all, loves bikes and loves sharing bikes with others even more. He's constantly happy, upbeat, and encouraging to all those who know him. But most importantly, he can suffer. So welcome, Chris. Grateful to have you on.
Thank you. It's good to be here. A lot of fun doing this. Along with Chris Peterson here, we have Geno, and that name everybody knows. Whether you have just joined the team recently or you have been with the team for a long time, just the name is Geno. Most likely don't even know his full name. Just when the word or name or phrase Geno comes up, it's well respected amongst Mi Duole team members. Geno and Chris ran the team before Stu and I did, and I was a young new member of the team, and I learned very quickly that Geno was just the kingpin of Mi Duole. Naturally, I wanted to get to know Geno, ride with him. And before I knew it, Geno became a mentor of mine. I found myself asking Geno questions about races and events. And what piqued my interest immediately is Geno wanted to win, and I learned that from Geno. I learned how to train during the week and during the month to go to events ready to perform, and was not only intimidated but intrigued on, I'm learning here. There were race conversations that would go on throughout the week, and Geno was intense. It was not always just a ride to ride. It was more of a ride for preparation, and we would work, and that's how we would learn how to execute. When I was first getting started, one of the entries that I entered into was the Snowbird Hill Climb, and I rode that with Geno a couple years, and I saw Geno win that Snowbird Hill Climb. And then I will never forget the inaugural Tour of Utah, you guys. For everybody listening,
that's a great one.
This group on here rode, and at the time was a race. The Tour of Utah was a race that started in Park City, and Mi Duole had the largest group of members show up for this event, and kind of led out the pack from Park City Mountain Resort is where that race began that year. And Mi Duole and just led it, and Geno again just driving the pack on how we would lead out. I remember Ed Chauner won the hill climb that day. So another thing about Geno, just a extremely strong mountain biker, strong passion for racing, mountain biking. I really gained a lot of my interest in mountain biking, both from Geno and Chris. And to this day, Geno has a lot of, is on the leaderboard for some of the fastest times, even participated in the Park City Point to Point this past year in the virtual event, much faster than me. And so a long-standing reputation that goes along with Mi Duole as far as winning and mentorship. So that's Geno.
And I think one of the cool things about this, that I mean, if you haven't gathered from the podcast already, the reason that, maybe not everybody can ride together, but to know these two is to know our examples, our kind of the men to look to, the mentors. They both wear a yellow jersey on purpose, so we can look to them and kind of learn from them. And this is probably the last serious thing that we'll say on this podcast before we get into just kidding. I'm very excited for all the stories and stuff that are on our little outline here that we're going to work through. But I think first thing first, Chip, why don't we talk about history and kind of how both of you connected with the team and got involved? Do you want to lead that out, Chip?
Yeah, let's do it. You guys have heard Stu and I give kind of the history of Mi Duole as we started out this podcast. The gap that we want to cover with you guys is talk about when you took the torch of I am running this club. We want to hear from Chris. You go first, and then Geno, just tell us, how did you take the torch of running this club?
Well, that's kind of a funny thing, the way it works, and you might relate to this. It's I connected with Ken Jones back in the 9th and 9th days of Mi Duole, and Ken was kind of headed up, and in his Ken Jones sort of way said, "Hey, why don't you can you help me with the clothing a little bit?" And it's sort of like becoming the Dread Pirate Roberts. You don't really plan on that, as it's not a planned career path. It just sort of happens. And so he very cleverly kind of slid that responsibility off on me. And if you're dealing with clothing, that puts you front and center. You interact with everybody, and by default, you sort of become it. So that's sort of how it happened. And then that Geno, I'm sure, can very much relate to that. Again, if you're handling the clothing, you're just there. Everybody's got to deal with you. We really didn't have quite as fluent of a system, so that's really how I got started. Then, of course, got into it, met Ken, and then ran into a lot of the rest of sort of the crew back then, the Dan Mosers, Tom Uranas, and that. they knew I'd done loaded jaw once before. Ken had done it before too, but some of those other guys came in and they looked to us for guidance. So again,
Chris,
showing how gullible they are.
Why don't you say what year that was also, just so we have a reference?
Early 90s.
Early 90s. Okay.
So early 90s. For the real history back before me, you need to go to Jim Morgan, because he is truly the godfather.
Yep.
I think he was actually born on a Mi Duole ride.
Geno?
Yeah, so interesting story here. So I was a climber before I was a cyclist. And there was a year, it was 2002, 2001, I think. My kids were getting old enough to play their own sports, and I was always missing their sports because I was going climbing. And my wife Holly looked at me like one day, like, Geno, what are you doing? So I also had a really weird year climbing. I took some giant falls. Never decked, but it just, climbing became not fun. So I called up my buddy, Dave Sharp, and I said, Dave, I know you ride with these Mi Duole guys, and I want to ride, but I don't want to ride alone, but I'm not strong enough to ride with these guys. What do you think? Should I give it a shot? So I actually rode, I think, for 1 or 2 years maybe before I had enough nerve to go out with the group. And when I did, I was hooked, and I met Chris, who's become one of my best friends. And I really learned what it meant to suffer. And then, of course, when you're riding with Sharp, right, you never have an easy day. No ride is just a ride. So some time went on, and then there was a kind of a changing of the guard that Chris just talked about when he was asked to help with clothing. And there were a couple of other guys that no one liked that were making a play to take over the team. And I went to Chris, said, Chris, we got to stop this now. So we just took it over.
Oh, that is,
it was great. I can't really name the year, and I don't want to, I don't think anyone would be able to figure it out except if those guys were listening, but and hopefully they're not. But anyway,
hostile takeover.
It was almost a hostile takeover, but it never got to that point. But and then I was really interested in coming up with these rides that, Chris and I would think of these crazy rides that I don't remember, Chris, those types of rides happening beforehand. Maybe they were, but it seemed like we were doing the same ride every Saturday. And, I got tired of doing the dam tour, or whatever it was called. So we came up with these crazy schemes, and it caught on with the group, and it's just grown from there. It's fun.
And I think that's a huge thing right there that I actually wanted to address. I think that is part of who we are as Mi Duole, is that sense of, we're not just going to go out and do whatever generic tour 101. It's got to be something creative and fun, and one of those ones where people go, really? And that's the draw. That's the magnetism right there. We just come up with something that's like, that would be fun. I wonder what would happen if we tried that. Is that going to work? And
totally.
Kind of the more over the top it was, the more people wanted to go.
Yeah, I remember being in the saddle at 5:30 in the morning, thinking, man, I could be home making pancakes, and then 7 hours later, coming up the backside of Big Mountain in 100 degrees, I was thinking, my family's at the pool, the tennis club, or somewhere. What am I doing here? But I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't have missed it for anything.
Yeah.
Well, I think Chris says it best, doesn't he? Say we put the ooh in stupid for a lot of years.
we put the O in stupid. Yeah. At this point, we debate, like, how many O's does this ride? How many O's do we put in stupid on this ride?
So good, dude.
Chauner had us up to 3 O's last summer.
Nice.
Well, I just want to make mention of the importance of you guys taking lead with with maintaining and taking over the team because of where it has led to. I mean, I think it's just an important piece of history. So very cool. Someday maybe we will hear that full story on a ride, not to be published here, but I really like hearing that. Okay. Speaking of the 3 O's in stupid, there is a Facebook post of, I think, Stuart, Chris, and I at the snow line in Mill Creek. And I think the title that I titled it is 24 degrees. Yeah. And it was April morning. And that's what made that event that day so fun, because, you know, you ride to the snow line. These days we're hiking the bikes through the snow to get to the cement on the other side. But what I think is cool about Mi Duole, and this group can share it, is if a race is thrilling and we train for that, but some of these rides that you guys started to do and that we have incorporated into the team are just as thrilling or as exciting as racing is the adventure.
So. Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed our training rides more than racing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought actually racing was prepping for our normal ride.
Because a race is easy compared to a general
totally
Mi Duole ride. So talk about your history of racing, Geno. You've raced road and mountain for so many years.
Yeah, you know, I would race like a lot of guys 2 or 3 times a week, and it kind of consumed me, and I'm sure that so many listening to the podcast can relate to that. When I years later in my riding history, there came a time, actually just, I don't know, 5 years ago, when I started climbing again. I started to ride for fun, and I'd made a decision not to race anymore, and it's actually been the most fun I've had riding in 20 years of riding. And so that's just some advice I throw out to folks, that racing's great, and it keeps you strong and keeps you on the edge, and competition is great. But you know, it has an impact on your lifestyle, and it had an impact on my lifestyle and my personality. I listened to a podcast with John Olson, and Spencer and John are kind of talking trash about me a little bit, saying I was intimidating. I don't think I was, but maybe,
come on,
maybe a little, but I am become a different person, I think, riding for fun now, and learning to be a little bit nicer cyclist. So when I think back of racing, it was all, Argh. In fact, I'm too afraid to join the Zwift Tuesday morning things or Tuesday night, because I want to be fast, and I know I won't be. But anyway, one event in particular was the first Ultimate Challenge. No, it was the second or third one. It wasn't the first one. It was a later one. Tony Quinn was still around, and I don't know what drug Tony was on, but he just hammered from the start, just hammered. And I was feeling really good, strong, and we were passing people, and we were up ahead. And well, I got to the bottom of Little Cottonwood Canyon, and all of a sudden I could not pedal. I was one pedal stroke after another. And as I started to go up the canyon, I saw these guys laying in the side of the road, just laying in the gravel. And there were even some guys down in the river trying to, cool off. It was so painful. And Dan Moser comes up on me and says, "Hey, Geno, you having some trouble?" And it was like, I can't swear in the podcast, can I?
No.
I was so mad at Moser because Oh man, after all the times, he just had a chance to kind of put it in my face, and then he went on and had this great ride. But I think that was one of my darkest moments. And then right after that was Loaded Jaw, and it turned out I had bronchitis, which was the problem I had in that event. But I rode Loaded Jaw anyway, and I got dropped like 5 miles into the race. And so I sat up on my bike and just chatted with groups of riders as they let me ride with them for a sec and then drop me. And it was my best Loaded Jaw. It was my slowest Loaded Jaw, but it was the most fun because I didn't have any pressure, and I just rode it and had a smile and said hi to people and made a few jokes. And so those are my two dark and fun moments.
What I will say about Geno for those listening, and we'll transition here, Stu, I'll turn it to you. But for those of you that ride with Geno today, may enjoy a very friendly, calm Geno as he is explaining about himself. The Geno that I rode with was that race intense, intimidating. Now, not to say that that was in any way a bad thing because of the culture that it drove to take it serious and train well. But I don't know that we are letting you off the hook, Geno, is what I'm saying from the podcast with John.
I deserve it.
Okay.
Chris, like looking back, we don't need your life story, but we've asked you to kind of maybe think about best and worst events or moments that you've had. Anything come to mind when it comes to what you've done with Mi Duole in the past years that you
Sure.
think fun?
All kinds of stuff. Just to add in a little on Geno, he's sort of the Eddie Merckx of Mi Duole. He is the cannibal.
Mm-hmm.
So truly, yeah. So I've always in the past been pretty focused, but not like Geno or Dave. I think I'm still at a root. I'm in it for the adventure, but I don't know, kind of the history. I've sort of always ridden and always been in it for how much can you do? How far can you go? How fast can you go? And so, of course, Loaded Jaw is particularly appealing to me. That was always a big draw. And then the other races, I got mixed on the two Everest. So the Everest I was referring to is the Everest race in California. That's a great race. That's
definitely the funnest race.
Oh my gosh, yeah, 30,000 feet of climbing over 2 days. So that's the one. An incredible race, yeah, and a lot of mischief and mayhem on that race between all of us there. So that was a good one. We traveled to for a few years. Loaded Jaw, of course, it's front and center for everyone in Mi Duole. A lot of the races we've had around. We had some great races. The Chums race down in St. George area for years was a good race. The Over the Top, the classic to Evanston, that was a fun one. That one was pretty good for me because I've never been super good at anything, but sometimes a combination of a long day and a good climb, that's always worked for me. So I had some success in that race there. And, a lot like Geno is the past few years, I focused a lot more on the mountainside. And I think that's, it just allows me a little more progression. I'm never going to be faster on a road bike than I once was. And I was only, moderately fast anyway. But it's kind of fun because, the mountain bike racing world, there's still stuff to learn. I'm still getting a little better. And Geno's been a great mentor for me there. That's been fun. It's been fun to help out, pass it on a little bit through the NICA world. I was able to help coach some of the Skyline kids when that was first getting going a few years ago. And so, yeah, it's kind of a cool run on some of this stuff. But again, I love it that Mi Duole has managed a very good balance between we're a group of guys who are going to take care of each other. We're going to have fun, but this is a race team.
Yeah.
And we're, let's keep it so it's just not nonsense. We want to have fun. We want to put the O in stupid, but we're going to be competitive on race day.
That reminds me, that's an important part of the history of Mi Duole, and where Chris and I kind of stepped in. You know, before us, Mi Duole funded a pro team, and that's what Mi Duole was about. That's where our money went to, and it wasn't you know, a broad club. It was all about racing. and then when Chris and I took over and we started to look at how much money went into that, one of the first things we did was stop that, because we wanted to have a club that was broader, that more people could be a part of, men and women, by the way. And I'm so glad we made that decision, because Mi Duole before that was pretty elitist, and so we had some work to do to change that. And I think it took a few years. You remember that, Chris?
Oh yeah, and it really just had a different purpose back then. It wasn't really designed to be accommodating or friendly. So again, there's always a balance. That's an ongoing thing year to year in every club. You have to wrestle with that balance of who you are. We have always had the identity of going farther and climbing. You know, and people, you're a Mi Duole guy. You guys go big. You know, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you guys are just the dumbest.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we move on, we want to do some advice, you know, from you guys, kind of from your years of experience. But before we move on, I really do want to hear one of my favorite moments with Chris was we were riding up Mill Creek, and he's like, I got to take it easy. You know, this weekend's BFR. And I was like, he kind of said it as if I was like, oh yeah, well, obviously I know what that is. And that was kind of where it ended. I was like, okay, well, BFR, yeah, obviously that's going to be so fun, Chris. Good luck. Like, I had no idea what he was talking about. And then Scott Verheeren, Eric
Olson,
Eric Olson, Paul Watson,
Dan
Chris,
Braun.
They ride from St. George to Salt Lake. I mean, I think it's 315 miles, right?
Just depends on the route. Yeah. So there's a different variation for BFR each year.
And BFR is, don't get your mind out of the gutter. It's big fun ride. Big fun ride.
Yeah, it's a family podcast. Now, halfway through the ride, that may change.
That's less than 24 hours, by the way.
Oh yeah. So I just want to hear, Chris, I gotta know. I mean, we gotta know why. I mean, because you've also done, like I said, white rim. You did it forward and then backwards one time. I mean, I just kind of want to know your mindset behind planning stuff like this.
Yeah, I think the functioning thing there is lack of mindset. If you're looking for some excuse or reason, it's just not there. So the whole BFR thing, you know, it's kind of an evolution of, well, you know, loaded jaws, cool. Everybody wants to get that. You know, when you're kind of new at it, it's sort of a totem and not really a race. But what comes out of that's, okay, 200 miles, I can do that. And that really wasn't a big thing. So what do? Do you turn around and ride home? You know, I mean, what's next? So the thing that kind of came out of that for me is like, well, can you do 200 miles? Can you do 300 miles?
Oh my God.
So I just picked up and I planned it out in infinite detail and just rode Salt Lake to St. George. And I planned out the route so I'd be the right place at the right time of day for low traffic. And it was a solid plan, you know, building crappy headlights out of D-cell batteries in a PVC tube hooked up to a halogen light, you know, just cartoonishly bad stuff trying to get through the night. But it just evolved out of that, and then picked up another ride. Chris Chamberlain rode it the next summer with me. And of course, that's an adventure, 2 a.m. with Chris Chamberlain. That's all you need to know. Then picked up more. Pretty soon Ken Jones is in, and Scott Verheeren. And then it's like, well, we can knock out the Salt Lake to St. George gig pretty predictably. How fast can we do it? So again, we've been making it in 18 to 20 hours riding time, going through the night because it's cool and there's no traffic as you run from Delta down to Milford and kind of the back way in there. So again, routes and everything evolving them. So we kick it up further and decide, well, what happens? We made 300. We can knock that down. We're doing 300, 350, 365 as we do various routes, starting, say, at the top of Bald Mountain Pass, because again, anything you can get downhill. So pretty soon we're starting at Chalk Creek at the Wyoming line, all the way to Arizona. And the short version of that year is we made it with 2 minutes to spare. So it was that intense.
All right, so listen to this.
It was just
Oh my
Chris-
nuts.
God.
Chris is out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, and he's hurting. He pops several ibuprofen, and then he barfs. But he doesn't have any more ibuprofen, but he wants to take it.
No,
So
no.
what
stop.
does he do? It's the truth. He picks the ibuprofen out
Oh my
and
god.
takes it.
This is
I hope
wonderful.
you swallow that with
something that
Wash-
would embarrass your dog. But what happens on BFR is supposed to stay on.
I blew that one. So
That was the
I am-
best story ever.
That might be the title of this podcast. Eating ibuprofen from my own barf.
I can't believe that story. It's fantastic.
I suffer. Mi duole. I suffer.
Oh, that was so
We
good.
So good.
certainly do.
Chris, you were gonna leave that out. You were planning to get
there's
that.
no ways getting away with that.
No.
Well,
no, Gino will pay for that.
you guys have a lifetime of advice. A lot of young riders on the team, and a lot of new racers, riders, as the team evolves and changes. And one thing we obviously are always conscious of, is the culture of the team and what we believe and kind of how the team is organized. We asked you both to maybe share some advice, whether it's life advice or bike advice, kind of doesn't matter. Whatever wisdom you want to share, and anything else there, Chip, before we kind of roll into that.
No, I'm looking forward to this this race Bible that Gino carries around in his back pocket.
Yeah, do you want me to start, Chris?
Yeah.
All
Go
right.
ahead. I want to hear about this race. But do you have a name tag you wear on your shirt when you pass out those?
All right, listen. First rule: if you have gas that you need to pass, don't be stingy. Go to the front of the line and pass it. It reminds me of a little Cottonwood story. Chris, you want to share that one?
Oh my gosh! You mean before or after they did the environmental impact up there?
It was a foggy, damp morning in Little Cottonwood Canyon. They're riding through the clouds.
Oh my gosh!
Chris, I don't think Chris is gonna tell it. Maybe he's suffering, but I had some gas. It was
All I can
gas
say
I've
is there's
ever
about
had.
200 yards of Little Cottonwood Canyon just above Tanner Flats, and there's still no vegetation, and you can thank Gino for that.
I was at
There
the
are
front.
also half a dozen Mi Duole prospects that will never come back to the team ever. After
Listen,
that.
I heard like
Are you really
guy-
leading? Are you really leading your advice with a fart story?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was the best, and every rider, like the student riders, got to enjoy that moment. And I heard them express the enjoyment. We got up to Alta and turned around and went through that same spot. The smell was still there.
Yeah, right.
There's no exaggeration here, trust me.
All right. Okay. But if you need to blow snot, go to the back of the line. I mean, seriously. So Judge Tony Quinn, he was famous for blowing his nose. I like to ride behind Tony for, he was big, and
His
a
draft
good
was like a
drafter.
semi,
But he won. Okay, so he used to like blow his nose. I kept up. I put up with that for I don't know how many years. Finally, at the top of Browns Canyon, one cold morning, he blows snot all the way across my chest, like this string of snot. I almost barfed right there, but I was so mad. I rode up ahead and I kind of waited, and then Tony came, and Tony and we had a little private chat. He never did it again. So anyone that rode with Tony after that point can thank me for Tony not blowing snot on them. So pass gas, front of the line, blow snot, back of
Back of the line.
Nice.
Profound advice.
All right, you got to roll into this next one. I really love this pace line mantra, Gino.
Do you want me to pick something out or read this whole thing?
I think it's all good. I would read it or share
Okay.
how you want. Yeah.
All right, this is serious stuff here. This came after years of riding in races and groups of people I didn't know, and so I'm not, this is not a Mi Duole thing. It's just like paceline mantra, okay, that will win friends and influence people, and will seriously likely prevent you and others from having serious accidents. Um, my group riding form will instill trust and will not cause harm. I'll hold my line. I won't overlap wheels. I'll brake smoothly. I won't create gaps. I'll work to close them. When it's my turn in front, I will control the urge to surge. I'll happily take my share of pulls, but will pull off before I fade. I'll call out debris, turns, and stops. I'll keep an eye out for stragglers and help bring them up. If I get dropped, I won't release a string of profanity, at least not audibly. I'll have a few jokes and a smile to share, especially when the hurt is there. And most of all, do not open food packets in a pace line. So I think it could have been my first loaded jaw. I think it was. And I'm riding in this small group out of the Montpelier feed zone, and we're cruising along that moderate climb, and there are three guys in front, and the third guy's kind of alone, and then there's me, and I have about 8 riders behind me. I see the rider in front of me pull out a Cliff Bar and put both hands on the same side of the bar to peel it open. And I go, oh, this is bad. This is bad. And as soon as he ripped it open, he shot across the road and he hit my wheel. My bike went sideways, but I kept my balance. And I go, oh, sweet, I kept my balance. And then right then I got mowed over by like 8 guys. I had tire marks on my back, and both my wheels were bent. I was so mad. So my suggestion is, don't eat in a pace line.
Good
or
pace line
eat something
mantra.
that you can take out easily. So that's my story.
Good, excellent pace line,
Very good.
excellent advice. Good pace line mantra. Chris, how about you? What kind of comes to mind first if you want to share, your wisdom out there?
I just say kind of keep an eye on who's with you, and chat people up, just to take it a little bit different direction. I love the pace line thing, because I think over time we've had smart, good pace lines. And I think people have prided themselves in that and paid attention to that. And it matters. It's like, who do you trust? Who do you think of your friends you ride with? Who do you want to be with? Who do you want in your wheel? Who do you want behind you? So that's a great thing. But beyond that, chat people up. See, in a race, or whether it's just a training situation or just a ride, it's amazing what you learn, how that works, what kind of friendships you can build. Talk to people.
One thing
Get
Chris
some good
does.
stories.
One thing I love about Chris, and Geno said it here, was that he says, keep an eye out for stragglers and help bring them up. That is really
Very good.
Chris Peterson mantra there. He's always, it's so funny because we're always like, well, where's so-and-so? And here comes Chris with them in the back. Like he's always back there watching out and bringing a guy up from the back. So I love that about.
Plus it's a really good cover when I'm just dropped and blown apart. You think I'm being a nice guy.
That's good. All right, Geno, you've got a bunch more. You want to pick a couple more you want to go through?
So I have a couple on these next ones come from years of bike commuting between Park City and Salt Lake for work. So hundreds of days riding up and down Emigration and Parleys. So if you're riding along and you see a rider up ahead and he has hairy legs, you can beat him. No question. Unless he's a mountain biker, then all bets are off. And then let's see. When you come up on a rider in the canyon, and you pass him, I would say just be gracious and maybe not say anything, or maybe just like a really subtle hello. Because if you come up on a guy and you say, hey, how you doing? How are you having a good day? Having a good ride? You're just going to piss him off. he's just gonna think this jerk. I mean, oh man. And then if you get past in the canyon, there's no need to say, oh, it's just my rest day, or oh, I just got done with an interval, or I'm tapering, because it doesn't work.
No one cares.
So I've heard all those things. I've said all those things before.
I just tell him I'm having a rest lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to say, and I kind of said it earlier, was, I don't know. I doubt anyone in Mi Duole is getting paid to ride. And I don't think anyone's in the tour or in the World Cup. And so being nice is important. And it took me a long time to learn that, unfortunately. And because I just wanted to compete with everyone I rode with, mountain or road. And I would just say that no matter how hard you're training or how hard the ride is, take a moment to look around at the beautiful place where we ride and enjoy the scenery. And remember, the reasons you're riding. And when I say look around at the scenery, I would do that all the time, unless you're in a pace line. Then just look at the guy's wheel in front of you and still just try to enjoy things and be kind. But, still try to pass everyone you can, because that's really cool.
Chris, I know that this has come up in podcasts before, but, a lifetime of trying to balance family, work, and this endurance sport. Any advice there on how you've kind of made it work for yourself?
Yeah, well, I think we all wrestle with that. I don't know if I've achieved too much. I mean, the success I would like to have there, but I think just kind of establish what's normal, a routine, and that's the whole thing. It's like I get a lot of grief for being the Lord of Darkness. Well, there's a reason for that. You get up at 5 and start riding, you get it all in before anybody notices you're missing. Mm-hmm. And of course, Dave Sharp alluded to this on the other podcast, and that's that, yeah, you're useless by 9:30 at night, but we just won't talk about that. But I try, the second I get home Saturday, I try to be present. It's like, I'm going to be home by noon, and I'm going to be present. There's those days when you've just had the living stuffings kicked out of you. You can't even stand up in the shower, but I get out of that shower and I pretend like I'm happy to go out and be working in the garden. So I don't know, there's no magic to that, but just be present and then plan other stuff. It is interesting. You think of all the support that your family has to give things. The literal support, all the work it takes to support a rider on low to jaw. My wife is so good at that, but honestly, she doesn't love it. But at the same time, she looks back now, my kids grew up. We've gone from not having kids. My kids are big enough now, they can support me on low to jaw. But they look back on those family trips up there and they love it. So just to try to include, sometimes it's hard. I think we all wrestle with this, but just be present when you're not on your bike.
Stu and Chip, I would feel remiss if I didn't mention my Mi Duole heroes, Chris, obviously, and Scott and the BFR group, but Shawner and Sharp.
Absolutely.
Were really the ones that taught me how to hurt and how to at least try to be fast, and wanting to pass everyone you saw on the road, but graciously. Mm-hmm. And Sharp
Ken Jones is on that list too.
Yeah,
right up
yeah,
there.
Ken, for sure. Yep.
Geno, I think that you're, Chip, I only rode with you a few times on the road, and Chip would always say, well, Geno now is more of a mountain biker. I think it might be interesting to share for a sec how you made that move.
That's an easy story.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a year of crashes on the road. Mm-hmm. So Bear Lake Road Race, you do, I think we did two laps in that category. I can't remember. But anyways, you come around toward the south end of the lake, and the finish this year, they put the finish up this little country lane. So you go off that super wide road into a driveway, basically, and we all funneled in together. And a guy came up on the side and his derailleur caught my front wheel, and I just launched. My helmet was shattered, and I had guys riding over me in a sprint. I mean, this was a sprint. It was a sprint finish. And I still have a tire mark. And I thought, this is insane. And then it wasn't, and I think that was the year of a loaded jaw crash or another bad crash. And I basically got really tired of guys piling up on me when I didn't cause it. Mm-hmm. And so I really kind of got freaked out by the crashes on the road. And so living in Park City, there are always mountain bike races up here. And Holly, my wife Holly, bought me a mountain bike that year. And she said, Gene, don't race your mountain bike, just ride for fun. So it didn't
Not
last
possible.
very long. But I started mountain bike racing, and I was hooked because, one, the intensity at the start. It's mountain bike races, as you may know, they don't have a slow rollout like a long road race. My heart rate is like 200 at the start of a mountain bike race, and it's just full on. But if you crash, it's your own damn fault. Mm-hmm. No one else is going to cause it. And so I liked having that control. So I love the intensity of mountain bike racing. I loved racing on the dirt and in the mountains. The falls are typically when you're going slower and in a techie section and you're falling in dirt rather than hitting asphalt at 40 miles an hour. No one piles on top of you, and it's just super intense. So that was the switch.
Good switch. Well, Chip, I think we're kind of coming in for a landing. Any questions or anything you else want to wrap up with?
No, just would say again, as we started the podcast, we said thank you to these two for being able to maintain, manage, run the team, allow the transition so that we have, there are a couple hundred people, riders, racers on the team today that are listening here saying, thank you for managing the team, maintaining it so that we have what we have today, which is a very strong cycling community. So
nice work with the team. You guys have done just amazing work with the club. So way to go. It's stronger than it has ever been. Chris and I spent several months and had a lot of conversations about who to hand the team over to. So that was a carefully thought out decision to
we chose wisely.
Hand it over to you two. So nice work.
Yeah.
Thanks
so much.
We're grateful. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. We're going to wrap up. Appreciate you both, and hopefully we'll see each other on the road soon.
All right. Thanks all.